everyone. A big welcome back to the Nick Elston Show, and it's season 5, episode 3. And today, as promised, as per the agenda, another amazing, wonderful guest to bring you in the shape of Sarah Tait. Big round of applause. Woo!
Oh, thank you for having me.
You all right?
Yeah, I'm great. How are you?
Good. I'm really good. Although, in the spirit of honesty, it's Friday afternoon as we record this. I'm feeling a little bit jaded. I feel like I'm crossing over the finish line. Always best to be honest, right?
Always. You're nearly there. You're on the home straight.
So our paths have crossed through the shape of my brother-in-law, Wayne Nutland, who saw you delivering some stuff in Lloyds Banking Group. And he said, you've really got to have this person on your show. She is amazing. So who am I to say no to that kind of introduction? So tell us who you are, what you do, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, cool. So I am Sarah Tait. I work for Lloyds Banking Group. I work in a property department within Lloyds, which doesn't sound that fun, but when I explain to you my job, I'm hoping you might find it more interesting. I look after workplace adoption, which means that I'm responsible for the adoption of our physical spaces along with our tools and tech. And the fun element of that is that we are looking to introduce communities into our offices. How do we encourage people to come in, but in a really collaborative, social and fun way? So I definitely get to bring a bit of fun. I'm responsible for what we call office vibe, which sounds pretty cool. I'm trying to get my job description changed to something like chief vibe officer or something. So that's my day job. But then outside of work, I actually work a compressed week for Lloyd. So I'm really lucky in that I can do flexible working. And I have Fridays off. So on a Friday, I am a neuro-linguistic program master coach and inspirational speaker. And that came about, and I'm sure we'll get to it, but that came about through my own mental health journey and where I've been and how I've got to. And I managed to blend the two things really well because I can actually bring some of the NLP and inspirational speaking into Lloyds as well, which is what I absolutely love more than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, for me, is an added bonus because I read about the speaking, I read about the coaching, but the NLP element is something I've always wanted to get to with somebody on here. And we can go into that too, because it seems to me it's one of those things. And for those who are not familiar, it's neuro-linguistic programming. We'll go into this, I'm sure, as we go through. But it's one of those things that I kind of tripped over as part of my recovery without even knowing what it was. And it's so crucial to recognize the impact it has in terms of what emotions we hold and how we go forward and into our day. So, yeah, that's an added bonus. So great. Sarah, from the top, tell us about young Sarah. Tell us about growing up and what's brought you to my door today.
I had a really good childhood, really, really good childhood. 2.4 family, mum, dad, me and my little sister. And I guess I was the youngest. I was the firstborn child, and I think I had probably lots of attention when I was younger for quite a few years, and was probably the centre of attention for most of my childhood until my sister came along, who I adore. But I remember at the time thinking, "What is going on here? Let me send her back." Because all of a sudden the attention was off me. I recall that memory as well as a 4.5-year-old. And I think I progressed through my childhood and I got to teenage years. My mum and dad split up, and my dad had an affair with a woman who was not that much older than me, which was quite tough as a 13-year-old girl. And looking back on reflection, it was quite a tough time. And I don't think I ever really dealt with it. And I think I managed to push a lot of it down until I then walked into my adult life. And I heard this amazing thing the other day, and it rung so true with me, that said, the most of us sleepwalk the shit from our childhood into our adult life, and we don't deal with it until we get to a crisis, and then all of a sudden it comes out. And I feel like that's what happened to me. So I guess what's brought me to your door is then it was an accumulation of a few things. And when I we first met my husband, and we got our own flat, I didn't really know what to do. And all of a sudden I was responsible for all of these things that I've never been responsible for. My mum was amazing and did everything for us. So I all of a sudden was responsible for a house. I was planning a wedding at the same time. And I'd taken on a new role at work, which was a really high profile job of running our first ever flagship digital concept branch. So I did all three of those things in a really short space of time. And I think if I look back now, I pinpoint that's probably where my mental health problems, mental illness started.
Okay.
Albeit probably from some stuff that was pushed down as childhood and teenage years. And when my husband and I got married, it was everything I'd ever dreamed of. I'd always wanted to be a wedding planner, and planning a wedding was amazing for me. And then it was the day after the wedding, and it felt like I'd fallen off a cliff and just didn't know what to do with my life, and had lost all sort of sense of purpose, had all of a sudden become a wife overnight, changed my name. The wedding planning was over. Although it was an amazing dream wedding, it rained at the end of the night, and we got married in Italy, and I held on some definite perfection tendencies in the fact that it wasn't exactly as I planned it to be. And that was sort of the beginning of the real down that I had. And I turned 30 a couple of months later as well, and it felt as though I was having a bit of an identity crisis and didn't really know what was going on. And I'm sure we'll maybe get into this in a little bit more detail, so I'll just sort of keep it brief. But I then ended up having a real low, and it was not like the holiday blues that you've got before where you're able to pull yourself out of it. It was very different and something that I'd never experienced before. So I thought, when I came back, I know what I'll do. I'll throw myself into work, because that always works, right? Spoiler alert, doesn't work when you throw yourself into work. Ended up working ridiculous hours, like crazy hours, was taking up all of my waking time, was thinking about work. Work would be the first thing I would do when I woke up in the morning, pick up my phone and check my emails. It would be the last thing I would do at night. I would work at the weekends. And it got to a point in the new year where, and this was the beginning of 2019, it was like my brain had just gone, you can't take it anymore. You physically can't do this, and you cannot live your life this way. And I crashed. I completely crashed. I felt a pop in my brain one Friday night, like a popping sensation, almost like my brain was breaking. And that was the beginning of a psychotic episode, of what I now know was a psychotic episode. And for 5 days, I didn't sleep. I didn't, I lost total touch. I was totally out of touch with reality. Thought I was in a coma, thought I was, thought the TV was talking to me, thought all sorts of thoughts that you would never think, or if you think them, you would just not really acknowledge them. But it was so real to me. And I was having 20 plus panic attacks a day after never having had a panic attack. And that was all because of a buildup of stress and a lack of sleep. And I didn't know something like that could happen. And that's where I find it so passionate I've got such a passion to share what happened to me, what I would class as a pretty normal girl that had a pretty normal upbringing with a couple of bumps in the road, but actually never, ever having had any problems with her mental health until the point where it hit so hard. And when it hit to the point where I was nearly sectioned. And I've not heard many stories like that before. And that's why I feel such a passion to share what happened to me, and then how I overcame it, and how that's transpired into me now being a coach and a speaker to help others hopefully never get to where I got to.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, especially with such kind of candor and clarity as well. I do appreciate that. And I know that will really resonate with my audience as well. The eclectic bunch that they are, lots of different people from lots of different places. I know that will resonate with a lot of people. So thank you for sharing that. I think that you're quite right. And that's the power of being able to be vulnerable in its truest sense, of being able to share that, because actually people will emotionally connect with what you just shared. It's not about what we say, it's about how we make people feel. And I think the way that you described that, kind of, you were taking people on that journey. I think people need to hear that as well. You also touched on something which is really close to my heart as well, which is kind of how kind of family breakdown can start to kind of condition you for adult life. And I talk a lot about conditioning. I think it's probably where my kind of crossover and finding the NLP world come into it, really. Talk about a lot of conditioning and about how our formative years, a lot of our biggest challenges in adult life can be from those times. And like you say, largely unaddressed issues. I talk very openly about kind of my mental health and mental illness, but also my relationship with alcohol, and also even being big. I'm 6'3", 24 stone guy, and kind of that relationship with that period of my life as well. And it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because like you said, sometimes it's easier to stay in a position of pain and frustration than it is to do something about it. So when you decided you did want to reach out for help, how did that look for you?
It was really hard to start with because I have always been the strong person. And I think that's possibly part of the problem, in that I had then given that label to myself as well, and that I wasn't able to be vulnerable. I wasn't able to ask for help. And I don't think I'd even recognized it myself until it got so bad, because I was like, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Like, everything will be fine. I'm strong. Everything I've dealt with in the past, I'll always be able to pull myself back from things. And I think the fact that even I didn't recognize it in myself speaks volumes. I remember having some counselling through work. We're really lucky. We've got a really, really good wellbeing proposition, and we've got lots of employee benefits, and I managed to get some free counselling through work, which was brilliant. But I also remember having the 6 free counselling sessions that we initially get, and feeling like once I'd had that 6th session, I'm fixed now, this is great. Yeah. I'm absolutely fine. It absolutely wasn't. And I remember how hard it was for me to tell my mum and my sister about the fact I was having counselling, because I was always that strong person. I was always the strong friend. And I think that's why it was such a shock for everybody. And that's why I was so anxious about telling people that I was struggling, because I had never struggled. But really I just hadn't been telling people the whole time.
Yeah.
And it was really hard telling them the first time. And then I think once I'd told them, you instantly feel closer to people, I think, when you're more vulnerable and you're more open and honest about how you're feeling. I remember my mum and sister being that makes so much sense, because we've known that you've not quite been right, but we've not really known why.
Yeah.
And actually, when you're open and honest, then you're able to connect on a much deeper level with people. And I now know there's so much strength in being vulnerable, so much strength in vulnerability and being able to share that. But taking that first step is hard. And I think when I had the psychotic episode, and that night where I say my brain popped, I didn't really know what was going on. So like, me and my husband sort of didn't really understand what was happening, so reached out to my mum, and then I was able to then get support through work through Bupa as well, which meant that I was able to see a psychiatrist at the Priory within 4 days of it happening. And because it was the weekend, I mean, it was great support. So I think it's not always easy to share how you're feeling, but if anyone is listening and is in that same position that they felt, where they feel as though they can't share that with somebody, people care so much more than you think they do. They really, really do. And especially the people that have always been there, that love you unconditionally, they genuinely care and just want the best for you. So I would just say, absolutely, like, reach out and just share. Even start with, I'm just really struggling at the moment, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And despite what I hear on the news and social media, humans are essentially good. Humans do essentially want you to succeed, but you need to show them what you need. And I think there's the challenge, I guess. It's when you're feeling in that place that you don't want to show the world your true self, but then you expect the world to engage with you on your terms. And it's a very difficult balance to strike. Do you find that the speaking element, or the leading or the coaching or the championing work that you do you think that creates this kind of perception that people will look at you like, hallelujah, this girl's cured? Because it's something I spoke about last week with our last guest, Claire Russell, that again, another speaker like ourselves, that there is that perception, this guy's cured. Like, absolutely not. I manage my crap daily to varying degrees of success. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And I think speaking was a huge part of my recovery. And I remember being in the Priory and talking to my therapist and saying, I'm going to help people. I'm going to share what's happened to me. I want to help people. That's also sort of in me. I've always been walker all the time. My first full-time job was a Pontins Blue Coat as a holiday camp entertainer. So I feel like the stage is like home for me.
Sarah, that was the one on my sleeve. I did notice that. I was going to encourage you onto that right early. No, absolutely. We will come on to that though. That's great.
We will.
I think you're right. Sorry.
That the speaking is part of definitely how I cope as well, because I think when I share how I feel, it constantly reminds me of what I've been through and how far I've come.
Yeah.
It allows me to connect with people on a deeper level by me being able to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
I still really, really try to share exactly how I feel. And the bit where you were saying about, do people think you're cured? It's interesting because I obviously, so I don't take any medication. I only took medication for a few months following the psychosis, which I absolutely needed at the time.
Yeah.
I'm not having any therapy anymore. I had 8 months worth of therapy. So I guess in a doctor's eyes, you could say that I'm therefore cured of my psychotic episode, right? But reality is mental health is so many different spectrums, and we all have bad days and good days.
Yeah.
I think what I try to do now, and the NLP has definitely helped me with this, is try to think about what is it that's programming and what is it that's actually me? Like, what is it, the bullshit that you just say to yourself on a day-to-day basis versus what is it that's actually you? And that really, really helps me. And I think me sharing with others and sharing tips and tricks and my story and continuing to learn more and then being able to share that definitely helps me more than it probably helps other people. It helps me and helps me remember exactly what I've been through, exactly the recovery that I'm on, and reminds me to look after myself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, do you know what, I agree. I think speaking is still very much a therapy space for me. As much as it is aimed to help others, there is that element as well that you are kind of, I don't know, airing your stuff in front of real life people, aren't you? So you kind of get that kind of reality, and people know that it's just a very human driven approach, I guess. But I guess on the flip side of that, I guess it's the same with when you're doing things for people, that you can fall into that trap of people pleasing, which can be the kind of the reserve of people that are struggling with their mental health, can often be more subservient to more dominant people, dominant situations, dominant events. So there's a fine line between kind of helping or people pleasing, or even becoming that wounded healer that you give and give and give and give until you drop, and then you recharge and go again. How do you find your energy when you're doing what you're doing, and how do you recharge?
So I was the definition of a people pleaser, like that, pre-psychotic episode and hundreds and thousands of pounds worth of therapy, I would probably say I was an absolute people pleaser to the core. And I think what I realized through my therapy and through the NLP that I've done is that doesn't actually serve anybody unless I am full up and I am able to have be able to hold space for people and to be able to be there for people properly. I can only do that if my cup's full first, and the old renowned put your oxygen mask on first, right, which is such a simple thing on an aeroplane, but you can only help someone else if you've got your own oxygen, and that for me is a really, really big thing. So I think boundaries are really important, and I think a lot of my boundaries come in with how I interact on my phone, on social media, and with work, because essentially at home it's me, my husband, and my dog. So as long as we've got a good, everything's fine at home, then it's how I then interact with the outside world. And for me, that is through those things. And unfortunately, a lot of it now is through technology. So I remember hearing something on a podcast once that always stuck with me, that is, as soon as you open your eyes in the morning, if you pick up your phone straight away and go on whatever it is, social media, WhatsApp, your emails, whatever it is that you pick your phone up to do, it is like hundreds of people running into your bedroom all at once telling you all of their opinions, and it's too much for your brain. It's like you can't process it that early in the morning because it's just so much, it's information overload. So I have tried to be really, really strict with myself around the morning and evening routine that I have, and trying to not spend as much time on my phone in the morning and the evening, so that I give myself time to wake up properly and wind down properly, which for me is really important because my sleep was a big trigger for my psychotic episode. Also, throughout the day, I don't have any notifications on my phone. So I choose when I go into WhatsApp, I choose when I go into Instagram. And then I can really show up properly for those people as well when I'm actually going in, rather than half trying to work and half trying to answer a WhatsApp to someone. And then I'm not actually really fully present with anyone at that point. So I think how I manage technology, which is a big thing, especially for young people these days as well, that have not known any different. That for me is how I really try and set boundaries and how I manage to keep the time for myself. And then I guess the way that I recharge is spending time by myself, and introspectively journaling, affirmations, meditation, but also connecting with others, properly, like spending proper quality time with my husband, long dog walks with my dog, even just cuddles on the sofa with my dog and a tea. Like those things are really important to me, to make sure that I am disconnected from everything that's going on outside, so that I can really spend some time in my own space, but also in the space with my husband and my dog as well.
Yeah, I'm the same as myself, my wife, and my little Shih Tzu Tula. She really is a little Shih Tzu as well. And I love our time together. And I think it's one of those things that, like you said, it's weirdly, given what I do, I'm an introvert. So I recharge in my own company, as opposed to an extrovert recharging in the company of others. So I'm out all the time in front of people. I value the time you have, kind of like to yourself and to ourselves, kind of thing. And I get that. I think that there's, certainly from my experiences of delivering in the UK, for example, that culturally and generationally, sometimes we've got a problem in the UK with self-care as a thing. We'll feel guilty when we put ourselves before anything or anyone, so we don't. And we run again a little bit weaker tomorrow. But when I speak about the same stuff to US audiences, it's very different. This is actually maybe too much the other way. Somewhere in the middle is the truth. This really amazes me. This change of dynamic in a global world. This change of dynamic between two different ways we look at mental health and well-being and self-care. I mean, counselling, you mentioned already that through most of last year I was having counselling sessions. And when I mention that to UK audiences, very often you're going to get that look like, this guy's a freak, he's told us he's in therapy, kind of thing. But in the US audience was going, kind of, so does everybody else, Beardy Boy, just go, get on with it, kind of thing. There's this disconnect, isn't there, between our relationship with well-being generally in the UK, I think.
Yeah, and I feel like the US are so proud to share, this is what my therapist said, and this is what my therapist did. And I've always been a massive advocate of having people supporting you through whatever stage you're going through. So I needed the Priory at the point that I needed the Priory, which is nothing like how they make it out on the news, by the way. There's no celebrities there or anything like that. The Priory is definitely not like that. But I needed that at that point in my life. And then I think when I had NLP and learned it, as I was learning, it was self-therapy, and I was learning so much more about myself. And I feel like then you go through stages. So the next phase of my life at the moment is I'm thinking about, how do I prepare my mind and my body and my relationship with food before I enter the next stage of my life, which will be having children, hopefully in the next couple of years. So the stage that I'm at now is very much around, what do I want to do around my body and my food? And I've got a personal trainer, and I've got someone that I'm working with when it comes to building the relationship with food back from, which is so, our programming around food is unbelievable, and what we do and why we eat and when we eat and how we eat and things like that. And I find it fascinating, and that's the stuff I'm working on at the moment. And you're right, in America they would be so proud just to be like, yeah, I'm working with like a food intuitive eating coach and things like that, but we're probably less so here. And I think it's almost seen as like a self-indulgence in the UK. But it isn't. It's crucial. Like, you need people to support you. You need people to bounce things off. You need to learn. You need to be able to explore in a safe space with people as well.
And food's an interesting one, isn't it? Because there's so many rabbit holes I can go down with you. I'm trying to be very selective to keep on track. But the food's an interesting one, because actually it's one of the few things that we need to do. So it's not as if, like, for example, when I decided to stop drinking alcohol a few years ago, you stopped drinking alcohol. I didn't need to drink alcohol. Those kind of things are very simple in that sense. But when it comes to food, it's very different, isn't it? And like you said, there's a relationship with emotion, in terms of myself, my relationship with kind of like even family stuff, my relationship with my grandparents in between feeding me rounds of food. He's a big lad. He loves his food. I'm a big lad. I built a brand on it now, so I'm kind of screwed. But the point is, save yourself.
Exactly.
I mean, you did share really, really openly, and I thank you for that, around your therapy and also the roots of those kind of things. Did you find that kind of template from the family breakup? Because again, this was my kind of experience as well, kind of took those insecurities and everything else into future relationships. Was that something you had to really kind of fight against and work out or work through as you went into future relationships of your own?
Yes. So it's interesting. I've been with my husband for 14 years, and I definitely have found that there is an element of the worst thing that could happen to me would be if he was to leave me. And I think that very much comes back to seeing my dad leave my mum. And I think that definitely is ingrained in you. I think also it's interesting, and I learned a lot of this through my NLP and the relationship that I had when I was younger. And I was saying about how I was totally the center of attention for 4.5 years. There was nobody else around. And then my sister and my cousin turned up in the family, and all of a sudden it's not all about me. And I think I have found through my life and through my career that I have then wanted to prove and get the attention in a different way and get it through work and doing really well at work. And I think that then came out when I was in therapy in the Priory, in that I was attaching myself to really strong females within the workplace, that I could almost get that nurturing from them because of something I felt I lost a little part of from when I was younger. Yeah. And it all plays back. It all plays back to every time I talk to someone now, and people that I work with probably get sick of me because I'm like, oh, what happened in your childhood when in relation to that? And they're like, oh, here you go, psychoanalyzing me again. I'm like, no, I'm not. Actually, I just find it so interesting that most of the way that we view the world and most of our core beliefs are set by the time we're 7 years old. Yeah. And actually, to then try and change them is really hard unless you have unprogramming that happens and things like that, or you have a significant life event that takes you on a completely different course. But I definitely found that part of my life of feeling as though I maybe lost a bit of that attention and feeling like I then needed to prove myself came from there. And I think definitely from my mum and dad's marriage breakdown, I definitely have probably carried some of that into my relationship with my husband. I mean, I am so grateful to him because he probably puts up with so much from that people walk into their adult relationships, and I'm very, very grateful the fact that I can probably definitely bring some of that stuff into our relationship and into our marriage as well. Definitely.
But you say, again, thank you. I wanted to thank you because again, it's a lot of clarity in it. I like this, and like you, I'm fascinated by kind of these open conversations, which is why I don't script or put an agenda on this chat at all, because all these holes were disappearing down now. It's amazing. So I guess also with that in mind, that why do we do what we do is a really interesting question to ask yourself. Your self-awareness seems to be very, very high. I think because even if sometimes we don't like the answers, we know what questions to ask ourselves. And I think that's the trick, really, isn't it? I think this goes down to narrative. How do we speak to ourselves, and also when it comes to our habits and behaviors, why do we do what we do? I think those two questions are huge. Now, I know through what I mentioned earlier on about my very loose knowledge of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, but I'll give us an overview. If somebody was brand new to NLP, how would you explain it to somebody?
So I'd explain it by breaking down what each of the individual words mean to start with. So neuro means all of the information that we take in via our senses. So every single piece of information that we take in, we have to find a way to then internalize it to understand what it means to us and how it fits our map of the world. And when I say map of the world, frame of reference, same thing of the things that we have learned from our childhood and the things that we know and understand and believe to be true about the world. So when we take a piece of information in, we will filter it through a number of different things to work out what that therefore means to us as individuals. Mm-hmm. So that's neural. And then you've got linguistic, which is the words that we use, and that's to others and to ourselves, and the words we use about the world. And how that then transpires in what actually happens within our world as well, by the language that we use. Such a powerful thing. And then programming is basically that the programming that we have had from the minute we were even in the womb, rather than the minute we were born, from the minute that happened, or the programming that we've received from the people that have cared for us, the people that have been influential within our lives, and how we internalize that, but also how we build habits and structures and routines around that. And then the other thing I would explain is saying that we all have 3 basic emotional needs as humans to survive. We have to meet these emotional needs, and they are to feel loved and feel belonged and part of something. If you think back to tribe days, you needed to feel loved and be within the tribe, feel belonging, feel safe and secure, which is an absolute huge one. And most of the time, everything that we're doing is trying to get to safety, and to feel important and significant. And I think if any of those 3 things are off kilter, that's when we slightly feel out of not quite ourselves, because one of those emotional needs aren't being met. So if you can find things in your life that meet all 3 of those emotional needs and make you feel loved, make you feel safe and secure, and make you feel like you're important, then you've got your sweet spot. And that's when you thrive as a human being. And all of the things that I would use with clients and when I'm talking would be about coming back to those things. So either the basic emotional needs or the neural, the linguistics, and the programming. And most things that we do and why we do it falls into one of those areas.
That makes so much sense. So are you truly being heard in life and in business? And think about that genuinely. If the answer to that is no, then you've found the right event. If you want to give yourself that boost personally and professionally, come along to Find Your Voice Live. This will change your life. This will be the game changer that you've been looking for.
It provides me with the confidence in myself to prove to myself that I can do it, I can get up on stage, I can speak.
There's absolutely nothing to be nervous about with these events. It's very, very open, very, very relaxed.
Help my confidence go from here at the beginning of the day to here at the end of the day.
Hey everyone, my name is Nick Elston. I'm an inspirational speaker on the lived experience of mental health and a transformational speaking coach. I'm the founder of Forging People, and Find Your Voice Live is our flagship event where we cross the boundaries of personal development, mental health, transformation, and public speaking. Your ability to speak, to deliver any message to any audience with clarity and power and emotion will have an ultimately defining impact on your success by your own definition of that really subjective term. Speaking is life, speaking is business, speaking is education, and that's the thing that we focus on most. What I find is that people are here for many, many different reasons. Some people do absolutely want to be a stage speaker or a professional speaker. Some people want to be able to represent their business or to lead a team or inspire a movement or create a story. But even actually, some people want to be here just because they want to be heard at home. Maybe they don't feel their opinions being heard, that they can't say yes to the things they want to say yes to or no to the things they want to say no to. Again, this is where personal development meets mental health, meets public speaking to create a real positive impact. At the end of Find Your Voice Live, you will walk away with massive confidence around delivering your message. The ability to stand up and deliver means you will enhance your self-esteem in an amazing way. You will also have the skills and tools and tips and techniques to not only deliver a presentation, but to structure a presentation, to find your audience, to be able to deliver emotional storytelling to help your audience feel and make them want to be part of your tribe, make them want to be part of your following, and really tune into what you're truly about, to truly make yourself heard in life and in business. If you're sat on the fence, if you're still not sure, take the model that I use, say yes, worry about it later, and I'll make sure that you're looked after brilliantly. Myself and my team will make sure that you have an amazing day, transformational day that will have the desired positive impact that you want to achieve. There was a quote I heard once, I think it's from an NLP perspective, it's the map is not the territory.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's an NLP presupposition. Yeah, so there's quite a few of them. Yeah.
I do find it amazing, and this certainly aligns with what you were just sharing with everybody here, in an audience of people, and primarily given the nature of what I talk about, they're people that are struggling with anxiety or mental health challenges, that I do find it amazing how you can have two people sat next to each other, one who's experiencing anxiety and sees danger everywhere, and the next person who's not experienced anxiety and seeing danger nowhere. They're in the same room with the same temperature, the same people, the same surroundings, same everything, but two completely different experiences of life. And that blows your mind when you think about it. So actually we're going into Matrix territory here, but we do create that reality in that sense, don't we?
Absolutely. And I find people fascinating, and especially since I've done my NLP, and like you said, how two people can be seeing exactly the same thing, but really seeing different things.
Yeah.
And I always come back to the analogy of, when you've heard a new word for the first time, and then all of a sudden it's everywhere, and you're like, I'd never heard that word until now, and now it's all I can see. Or you're buying a new car, and then everybody has the same car as you, and you're like, how has everyone now got the car that I'm buying? And that is because that's how we're filtering our information. So we're taking bits of information in, and it's honing into that part of us that's made the decision to buy a car, and then you're seeing it everywhere else. So that is how you're shaping your reality based on your thoughts. So actually, if you think about that, then in the situation you were describing, where you're talking about someone seeing danger, if they're constantly seeing something and going, that's dangerous, they're going to constantly see it again and believe that it's dangerous. Yeah. Now, everybody has a level of anxiety. It's totally normal to feel anxious about certain things, like flying, for example. That's a really strange thing for our brain to comprehend, that we're up thousands of feet in the air. It can't work out how it's going to be safe. So that is like totally normal. Yeah. I think what then happens is people fixate, and I've done it, I still do it a lot, on that gives me anxiety, and like labeling it, rather than being like, actually, that is just my brain trying to keep me safe. Yeah. And that is just my brain trying to find a way of, if the worst thing was to happen, how I would cope and how I would be safe. Because we are hardwired for survival as human beings. We have to be. It's what we are here to, like, our brains are there to keep us alive. And that is what your brain is doing all the time, that you're finding something anxious or you're worried about something. It's basically just your brain trying to protect you and keep you safe.
I agree. I think anxiety is a healthy thing. Like you said, it's your brain telling yourself there's a perceived danger, go careful. It's why we don't stick our fingers in the sockets to see if the electric's working or not. It just is a good safety mechanism. And I think also when it comes to things like public speaking, according to Harvard, public speaking is a greater fear than death. We fear ridicule more than we do dying. So we're screwed, me and you. But we fear. We don't. I mean, in my years of coaching people to speak publicly, I guarantee that people aren't truly in fear of public speaking per se. They're afraid of rejection. It's a very human fear of rejection.
Yeah.
And I think if you can counter that, you're kind of winning at life. And if you work that one out, let me know. You could let me know. But I think
it's interesting though, because
with public speaking, I always get anxious, and I do this every day for 2.5 minutes before every session, before every podcast. But because the 2.5 minutes, because I accept that it's there, and I've got a playbook of things that works me through that. But without that, maybe I wouldn't perform as well. So it's good to have that as well, isn't it?
And I think also it's back to the linguistics and the words that you tell yourself. So if you're constantly saying to yourself, that scares me, that scares me, that scares me, you're not going to want to do it. Whereas if you start to tell yourself that you enjoy it and find the parts of it that you enjoy and how much you love it and what it gives you, and seeing that positive side of it, you'll actually probably be more inclined to want to do it. And if you think of a child and you think of a baby, and imagine telling a child or a baby all the time that, oh, you hate doing that, and you hate doing this, and you hate doing that, and that scares you, they're going to believe that. They're going to think that scares me and I hate doing that. It's exactly the same now. We're just adults and talking to ourselves rather than it being our parents talking to us. So I think it's that internal dialogue is so important. And I think as well, I know I've had people say to me before, I don't like doing affirmations because it's just like I'm trying to trick my brain or I'm trying to lie to myself. And it's like, fake it till you make it. Like, keep telling yourself you love it. Keep telling yourself you're confident in it. One day you'll show up as confident and actually loving it. And then you will then get even more confidence and love for it. And then it becomes this cycle of actually you're then reinforcing that that's true. And that becomes your new belief that you have.
I'm with you. I agree with that completely. I think affirmations are a very powerful thing. It's kind of a way of reprogramming yourself. But I think the problem you have is the same with kind of weight loss plans. It's the same with coming back from mental illness and all these other things that we experience, we got to come back from, that people expect kind of instant results. So tell yourself you're fit and strong and healthy, and then you're not. So people don't believe it. But it takes time and it takes consistency and those kind of marginal gains are the things that sports coaches talk about all the time. Tweaking something every day, reaffirming something every day, so that actually you start to change the way, and even neurologically you start to change the way that your habits are formed and stuff. I mean,
absolutely.
Coming into kind of present day, because literally I could talk to you for days, but it'll be the longest recording ever. But coming on to kind of the current day in a professional capacity, there has to be said you are still working in one of the last bastions of traditional business in the banking and financial world generally. How difficult has it been for you to kind of win people over when it comes to talking about things that they may have considered kind of like all the things I've been told before, fluffy or woo-woo, or all the other things you get thrown at us for being a little bit different or trying to bring well-being into the mix? Have you had any objections and how have you countered them?
It's so interesting because as you said that, you were like, how have you sort of navigated that? And I don't think I have. I think I've just said it and done it. And I think I've been so passionate about my experience and what I've been through that I haven't been afraid to talk about it. And I think I've almost just been so open and honest about it that I haven't even thought that people might not want to hear it, because I feel like I've got a mission to be like, why would you not want to hear it? Like, why would you not want to know what's happened? Why would
I'm gonna borrow that one.
Why would you not want to know? Why would you not want to know an experience that I have had through the same working environment that I'm in currently? Why would people not want to prevent that happening? And I didn't mean that to come across as arrogant. It's like, why would you not want to listen to me? But it's like,
I think it's brilliant. You can imagine like a stadium tour with a t-shirt. Why would you not want this on a t-shirt?
Why would you not want to know a way that you could actually do something slightly different? Why would you not want to know a way to potentially prevent yourself from going through a mental illness? And I think because I talk with such passion about it, and because I'm not afraid to show up as myself. I mean, there are some days where I am, right? And some days I'll be like, oh, I feel like I'm maybe too much at work, or I feel like I talk too much, or I feel this. And that's always a reflection on me and how I'm feeling, and never on anybody else. But the majority of the time, I would say I show up truly as myself. And I think when you have been through, I've probably been through more therapy than anybody I know. So I think when you've been through the amount of therapy and done the amount of work on yourself that I have, you can't be afraid to show up as yourself, because you've done so much work on yourself. And then when you show up authentically and from a place of care and wanting to help and passion and using my own journey, I don't think there's ever a place where people say we're not too sure that fits in, because it's almost as if I don't need to sell it because it's there, it's ready. I'm just being authentic with it. And I think I've never seen it as something that I necessarily need to sell, and more I feel like you should probably listen to this because actually I care. And I think when you come from that place of wanting to help people, it's very different from coming to a place of like, look at me, look how amazing I am, which it never is about that. It's always coming from a place of, I want you to know what I went through so that you don't have to go through the same thing as me. But I also want you to know that whatever you're going through, there is always hope. And I think that's sort of my big message and I guess my purpose. And I think when you're showing up as that purpose and you're really clear of what that purpose is, I don't think people ever really turn around and say, what's she talking about? And if they do, that's on them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really, John, it's really reassuring because I know 2012, when I first started speaking about this stuff in kind of law firms and big businesses, like I said, the traditional bastions of business, that I absolutely did get that. Like, I'm not sure if this is appropriate for a business environment. And so it's so reassuring to know that actually that's more mainstream to be more open about this stuff. And I still think that the challenge wasn't around the theme per se. I think it's around the actual change generally. Yeah. I think mental health as a term is really kind of always used in a negative. So people will say to me, Nick, I have mental health. Yeah, absolutely you do. 100% of us have mental health. Whether it's good or bad, that's a whole different thing. And I know you'll get this, but it's also a million miles away from mental illness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be kind of very much handled differently in that sense. But I think change suffers with the same fate. We always see change as negative, so therefore we resist it. Generally, it's easier to stay in a comfort zone than it is to do something about it, isn't it? So it's people like yourself, though. I mean, it's an outside voice coming in is great, but actually for one of your own, to see one of your own speaking about that, that's even more powerful.
Yeah, and I think you've got to be the change you want to see, right? So many people moan of like things aren't going to change, we're never going to be able to change things. It starts with you, it starts with me, it starts with all of us. Unless we change, stuff won't change. And I was at a really, really good event yesterday that was put on by our women's network in Lloyds called Breakthrough. And it was about breaking down the biases. And it was talking about how it does start with us pushing boundaries. It does start with how you want to break through things. And I think if you have got something really passionate that you want to talk about and you want to share it, I think you're right. I think there was definitely a time and a place where maybe it wasn't as spoken about. And maybe if it was, maybe I would have picked it up from someone else and maybe not have had the same journey that I'd have, because I would have seen more of it about. And I guess that's another reason why I'm so passionate about talking about it, because if people don't talk about it, then more people will just continue to push down and won't be able to talk about it. So absolutely, it's so important.
It is. And what we're doing is creating legacy, because it's not just about our stories, it's about helping other people to have their stories and to share that. So you're handing it down as kind of like a baton, isn't it? You're kind of handing it down to carry on. And I like that. So wherever you're, because you travel around doing this stuff, don't you? And it's I've been watching you looking intently on LinkedIn since. I love what you write as well. It's really cool. And you get asked for contributions to the press and media and stuff. And it's every time that you're popping up, actually, there's other people are then hearing your story, listening to what you say, and then they'll go and do their own thing too. So it's amazing that people don't even know you've inspired to do this stuff. I'm very conscious of time. There's two things I want to come to. So, or three maybe. But the first...
We might need a part two.
Episode 2. Yeah. So, right, the first one is, I guess, it's around this kind of professional element again, about kind of doing what you're doing in the workspace, and also what I love you doing, your coaching and your speaking as well. What's the future for you? What would you like to see? How would you like to see this play out longer term?
I don't know, and the reason I think I was so fixated on what's my 5-year plan 5 years ago. And it totally changed, right? I had a psychotic episode and then COVID came along. So I really try now to
Not a
not
fan of a quiet
think-
life then. Not just those
No.
two small things. Yeah.
I don't think I ever have been. To
Get a
be fair.
TV.
Yeah, but I think I really try not to think that far ahead now, because I just I feel like what's meant to be will be,
Mhm.
and what's meant to happen will happen. And if my career is meant to be in coaching and speaking, then it will. If my career is meant to be a head of health and wellbeing or a director within Lloyds, then it will. I just sort of take one each day as it comes. And I think when you're enjoying what you're doing, that for me is really important. So at the moment, I work a great job with a great manager, a great team of people, and some really fun work. It's absolute sweet spot. Outside of work, I've then got something I'm super passionate about. I get to talk to people like you. I get to go and talk to anyone that will listen, really. I've got people that follow me on Instagram, and it still amazes me that there's nearly 600 people that actually want to listen to what I talk about, which doesn't feel like many followers, but actually there's 600 people that care about what I've got to say.
Engaged as well. Yeah, it's not about
Yeah, and they do. Yeah, and I think I just like let it play out. There'll be some days where I'm like, my future is 100% in corporate space because I love it. I get so much from it. When I was talking about the love and belonging, the safety and security, and the importance and significance, I get that from work, and I'm really lucky that I get that from work.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me that thinks that if I went out on this journey of doing speaking and coaching full time, that I'd feel quite isolated and quite lonely, because I like to be part of something bigger. So whilst I can do both, I will continue to do both. What that means in the future, I just don't know, and I probably wouldn't want to plan too much and just let what will be.
Yeah, in the spirit of honesty, as you had extended to me, and I've shared this before, there's not one week that goes by where I don't want to press that big red eject button and go and do something for somebody else with a group of people. It can be isolated and quite lonely doing, even if you're in front of thousands of people, it's still just you and a distance between the people in front of you, really.
Yeah.
So when I am working in organizations, I love that kind of office water cooler kind of chat. And yeah, I get that completely. So yeah, thank you. So the thing I did want to get onto, of course, was the Pontins element, the blue coat thing.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. Maybe a funny story if you've got one to hand.
Oh gosh. Okay. So I guess, why did I want to go down that route? I'd done amateur dramatics and things like that in my early sort of teens, early childhood, and I used to go to Pontins as a kid and loved the blue coats and was like, one day I'm going to be a blue coat. And I think if I've learned anything about myself, when I set my mind to something, I pretty much get there. And I remember going for an audition at Pontins, and I like to sing. I can hold a tune, but I'm definitely no Adele. So I remember thinking, I'll just get by. Like it'll be fine. I'll do a bit of the audition, and I managed to be able to get through the auditions, which was great. And I just loved it. It was 18 months. It was so much fun. Like the hardest I've ever worked for the lowest pay that I will probably ever work for, but so much fun. And I never really wanted to go to uni. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I thought, do you know what? I'll go and get some life experience and do that. And I kid you not, the reason I got a job in the bank is because I had Pontins on my CV and someone thought it would be fun to interview me. They told me, and I'm friends with them now, they offered me an interview as a joke because they wanted to see what type of person a blue coat had been. And then 12 years later, I'm running a team in the property section of a bank.
And keeping everybody mentally well, see?
And keeping everyone, well, I'm not sure about keeping everyone mentally well. Definitely, hopefully inspiring with my story. Yeah, but I think that funness that I had as a blue coat still comes out in work now. I mean, I'm the first person on the karaoke machine on the night out, and I'm the person that would pull the team meeting together and be up there presenting and hosting the team meeting and running panel events and things like that. So actually having that as a starter for my career
Yeah.
has done me so well, because it gave me massive confidence. It gave me skills that you can't get at uni, people skills, being able to walk up to a group of people that are sat at a table on their holiday and having to go and talk to them. How good is that for networking? Like, it's such a good basis for a career. And I think I probably owe quite a lot of my success in my career to that job.
Absolutely.
Along with the fact that I met my husband there, who was a guest, which is not allowed. And his chat up line was, this is probably my funny story, his chat up line was, "All right, love, where's the karaoke?" And I was like, heart eye emoji straight away, 14 years later.
It's a funny old world, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Amazing. Thank you. And the final question, of course, I like to ask everybody that comes on the show. Your answer will form the playlist at the end of the season. I'm going to set the scene for you. And now the MC of the O2 Arena in London, 20,000 people have paid their hard-earned money to come and hear you do your thing, one of your many talents. I'm just about to call you to the stage. You're sat back in the green room, sipping a Prosecco, your tipple of choice, and you hear your walk-on music kick in. That song that motivates you, that lifts you, that gets you at peak state. What would your walk-on music be and why?
There's so many I could choose from. And I think as we've spoke through, you've sparked some like creativity back to my Pontins audition days. And my Pontins song was Survivor, Eye of the Tiger. And I feel like that it's come back full circle, that should definitely be any walk-on music that I choose to do.
Absolutely.
Because it's the first point of my first ever job and audition, and it's a good tune as well. Yeah, so I reckon Survivor, Eye of the Tiger. And Survivor, I like the fact that it's Survivor as well, and I feel like that plays into my story as my mental health journey.
Right? It just works.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Look, I guarantee this will not be the only time that our audience is going to be hearing from you, because there's certainly at least another episode in this for sure. But for now, Sarah Tait, big round of applause.
Thank you so much for having me, Nick. It's been great. Thank you.
Such an amazing guest. Thank you for giving us your busy time, Sarah. We really appreciate it. And for everybody else, I hope you enjoyed today's show as much as I did. Sarah would love to hear if anybody wants to reach out. Her contact details and LinkedIn bios in the bio and the write-up and all that stuff. In the meantime, click like and love and subscribe. You know, I'm not a details guy. Just click something that's going to make you listen to the next one. And that'll be next Monday. We have another amazing guest coming your way. So stay tuned. I'll see you later, guys. Have a great week ahead. See you soon. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye. Bye.